Before 1942, the American public's idea of war was almost entirely shaped by Hollywood soundstages, clean, choreographed, and completely controlled. But that illusion shattered when actual combat footage hit the screen. On the home front, news arrived heavily filtered through newspaper columns and strictly regulated radio broadcasts. People were desperate for the truth, yet entirely shielded from the physical, chaotic reality of the front line. Enter John Ford. One of Hollywood's most celebrated directors traded his safe studio lot for the contested, tiny speck of land known as Midway Island. When Japanese bombers arrived, Ford didn't seek cover. He positioned himself directly in the line of fire, keeping his 16mm camera rolling while taking on real explosions and suffering shrapnel wounds to his arm in the process. This created a massive problem. Ford captured the unfiltered, terrifying face of combat and handed it to a government that desperately needed to project an inspiring, invincible myth to a grieving nation. To understand why the military was so concerned, you have to look at the stakes. By early June 1942, the U.S. had suffered a brutal string of defeats. Midway was the do-or-die moment in the Pacific War. This map shows the severe imbalance of naval power. A massive Japanese fleet converges on the isolated Midway atoll. Against all odds, American dive bombers crippled 4 enemy carriers in rapid succession, instantly inverting strategic control of the Pacific. But the cost on the ground was severe. This surviving structure shows the sheer physical destruction inflicted by the bombardment, tearing away the concrete and exposing the rebar underneath. Because Midway was a desperately needed victory, the government couldn't let Ford's raw footage demoralize the public. The film had to be weaponized into inspiration. The reels Ford brought back contained images civilians had never seen. He documented genuine, unscripted terror on the faces of young servicemen and the sudden, violent moments of actual sacrifice. The danger destroyed the recording equipment itself. Look at the shattered internal components of this motion picture camera. The machinery of Hollywood was ripped apart by the battlefield. This photograph shows the terrifying scale of the aerial attacks Ford documented. Notice the sheer density of black flak bursts filling the sky above an exposed American aircraft carrier. There was no illusion of control, no pyrotechnicians, no safety nets, and absolutely no guaranteed survival. There were no second takes. This level of unvarnished truth presented a profound threat to military leadership. The raw evidence of war was deemed entirely too terrifying for civilian consumption. Before the public could see a single frame, wartime military censors stepped in and took control of Ford's footage. They systematically reviewed every reel, cutting the most devastating and graphically violent scenes. Their goal was to soften the visual blow, ensuring that home front morale remained intact. What emerged was a negotiated truth. It was a calculated compromise that kept enough raw shock to feel entirely authentic, but was heavily curated to ensure patriotism outshone panic. The military discovered a highly effective strategy. A carefully curated reality proved to be a far more persuasive tool for rallying a nation than any piece of outright fiction. When the Battle of Midway finally hit domestic theaters in 1942, American civilians were utterly unprepared. Sitting in the dark, audiences encountered the visceral imagery and deafening audio of actual combat for the first time. While military leaders feared the footage would crush the American spirit, the raw intensity of the film saw audiences lining up at theaters, reporting a surge in national unity and a renewed commitment to the war effort. The impact reached all the way back to the studios. The Hollywood establishment recognized the sheer force of this format, ultimately validating the film by awarding it an Academy Award. By refusing to stop filming when the bombs fell, Ford set a standard for combat documentation that prioritized the camera as a witness. This moved wartime media away from tidy reenactments toward the perspective of those actually on the ground. The Battle of Midway outgrew its origins as military media. It stands today as a permanent, damaged, and invaluable time capsule of raw human fear, courage, and history itself. If you want to uncover more stories behind the lens of history, subscribe to the Timeless Cinema Archive. And drop a comment below letting us know which classic war film we should investigate next.